Welcome back for part 2. As you can tell, it's a little bit colder out than when I did this the first time. Spent a while trying to find the plugs for the fog lamps. It's been lovely. Finally found it. I'll get more into that in a second. But basically, a gentleman whose name I don't remember off the top of my head had mentioned a company called Gen 5 DIY. I will give credit and overlay his name here somewhere right now, and I want to just thank him, and I'm going to show you guys the harness real quick. So basically, this is the Gen 5 DIY product, and it's a pigtail harness that uses the running lamps as a trigger for this relay here, which then gets hooked up to the battery, and when the parking/running lamps come on at night, it just opens up this relay, closes this relay, and turns on the fog lamps, which is pretty trick. And it's also a heck of a lot nicer than what I was going to do. Good weather pack connectors. The hardest part was actually finding these plugs. I had found a set, but basically this little notch here was flipped to the other side, and the clip was on the wrong side as well. So you could flip the plug over and it would actually work, but then the notch was, then there was no clip to hold it on, which was interesting. As far as this harness goes, I'm going to make 2 modifications to how the company says to use it. The first one being, I'm going to put a fusible link on the end here that goes to the positive, just a small little thing. And then the other thing I'm going to do is, it says to actually hook it up on the passenger side of the car behind the airbox. However, I'm going to try it on the driver's side because I have more room, and I'm thinking like I could hook it up here because you have to unplug this plug here, and I could run it through the fender here and hook it up underneath this right here, which is the main fuse block for the car. This positive is a direct run right to the battery, but I'd rather it be over here because I could tuck the loom back here and you would never notice anything, whereas if you had to disconnect the battery, you would actually have to disconnect that as well. This would be, you'd never have to touch it. I'd imagine that the pinout for both lights is the same and the plugs are the same. So I'm going to go with it should work, and I'm going to try it that way. And if it's all said and done and it doesn't work, I'll just show you how to do it the right way. But basically, for this side, all you have to really do is pull out the air filter box, and then I would imagine just hook it up to this guy right here. So we're going to get started in a minute. So the first step I'm going to do is get the plug off the back of the headlamp. So this plug right here should be exactly the same as the one on the headlamp, but this guy, this little red tab here, is actually pulled out on this plug. On the headlamp, it's pushed in like so. So you can't push this tab down to release the latch. So when I go behind the headlamp, I'm going to stick my finger in and just pull that guy out, and then slide my thumb in and push down on this little tab right here, and this should just pop out from the back of the headlamp. Let's see how this works. This is the 27th of December, and in New Jersey, as you probably heard the little plastic tab thing. I'm just moving it back and forth so you can hear it. So it's that guy right down there, and then it should just be there we go, and that's it. So I just pulled back on that red tab, and then with my other hand I just used my index finger to push down on this guy right here ever so slightly, and then I just gave it a tug from the wires, which you're really not supposed to do, but it popped right out, so that's good. And now I'm gonna go grab the harness. So I've kind of just got the harness laying roughly where it's going to be right now. I have the other wires for the fog lamps just sort of spread out, making sure that I have enough of a length. And there's plenty of wiggle room with how this... There's plenty of wiggle room with how this can be mounted out, so that's good. What I'm thinking I'm going to do is I'm going to tuck the relay somewhere in over here, if I can, and run the wiring through here and have it come out either through this hole up here or this hole over here in the fender and just go right over, which should make this fairly simple. The biggest problem I'm having is how to secure the relay itself in place. This is the lead for the headlamps. I'm going to push, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook this guy back up. That way this part's done. And it's affixed somewhat permanently. But first, let's just see. So, just checking the pin out on the two plugs. Just want to make sure that there's not extra or missing connectors from one side to the other. The new harness, the fog lamp one, has 8 wires, and the existing one only has 7. So I'm going to check the other side real quick. Alright, so I quick pulled this apart. It's really not too bad. There are 4 screws that hold the lid on for the air cleaner box. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the air cleaner box sits in the car like this so you can understand it. And once you get the lid off, you have to pull the rubber tubing off the mass airflow sensor, and you can kind of just lift it and flip it up out of the way. And then the air cleaner box itself just has these little pushing pins on the bottom, so you just kind of jerk it out. And then there's just these 2 body panel clips that hold this on, and then it's the same thing as the other side is pulling it out. So it is missing the same 1 wire. So for now, I'm just gonna stick this bad boy back in, but I'm gonna leave this all apart just in case, and I'm gonna get started hooking up the other side. Alright, so the first step's gonna be to plug the harness into the back of the headlamp. So I'm just gonna do one of this, so the tab goes up. Just kind of reach in here, feel around for the plug. Once you got it, push, and then push the locking tab on with your thumb. So it's a click. So it's a sort of click, and then you just kind of move your thumb and you go, and it clicks right into place. I can show you with this guy right here for demonstration purposes. So you would be pretending this is the back of the light. And obviously it won't move. So you would have it like this. Push it till it clicks. And then just take your thumb like so. Cool. So the next step's going to be figuring out where I want to tuck this guy. Where is their room? I will be right back. Alright, so I think I figured out, at least for now, how I'm going to mount up the relay. I'm going to go, if you can look down here, you can see that hole there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to feed the relay in through the fender like this and line it up with that hole, and probably just use like either a zip tie or a nut and a bolt if I have one, and just sort of attach it to the inside of the fender well like that. And then I can shoot the wiring for the fog lamps down the other way. So if you watch this, I'm just sort of sticking my hand in there, and if you look over here, you can see it poking through. So all I'm doing is just feeding it in, like so. It should be laying up over there now. I'll do that, but I also want to throw these guys down toward the fog lamps and get them mocked up, because I want to test this before I actually like permanently attach everything, just in case I do have to switch sides because something doesn't work. So I'm also going to take this. Sorry that I'm just pulling the harnesses up to each other right there. I will say that the wiring loom and everything that they have used to build this harness is very nice quality. Like, I mean, it's pretty cold out, like 30 degrees or so, 35, and these are still super flexible, which is nice. So I'm going to take this, like so, and just feed it through this opening here. And in the front corner, or not. Okay, I lied, not front corner. So if you stick your hand in and go straight down, there's an opening. So it's sort of in and down, and you can feel a small opening. It's probably about a big 2-3 inches. And that should hold on, let me get a flashlight. Alright, so I'm under the driver's side with the flashlight. And that little hole I fed it through, you can see they came down right there. So I'm going to put this guy here. I'm just gonna stick my arm up in there and pull them out. Alright. So now that I got it, you can see the back of the driver's side fog lamp right there. And all I'm gonna do is just reach in there and this son of a bitch on if I can reach it. Okay, that doesn't work. My arm doesn't fit that way. You're gonna kind of just have to trust me, but I'm just gonna take the shorter one and clip it on. And for right now, I've got the other one, the longer of the two, sort of just laying on the ground here. And I'm gonna do more or less the same thing. To the other side. Go. Grab the flashlight. So that's obviously not the permanent installation because that would be really bad. But as of right now, that's the only new piece of wiring, and everything else is tucked away nice and neatly back there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to pull this guy back up for now, so that I can lay him like so. And I'm going to get a socket for that. If you guys keeping track at home, 13mm. So I'm just gonna finish loosening this guy up here. And as of right now, just gonna drop that guy on there like so. And just do a quick like that. So these should be mocked up now. So let us try this out. If we do this, parking lamp should be on, the headlamp should be off. And look at that. That's pretty dope. And we're just gonna high beams that, make sure everything is in check. So we have headlamps, high beams, running lamps, and side markers. As well as fog lamps. That's pretty cool. So for right now, that works. That's all good. Let's get the keys. Make sure left directional still works. That's good. Right directional. Nice. I'm surprised the flasher relay's under the hood of these. And now they're off. That's pretty cool. Alright. Nice. So now we're going to get into the fun part, which is making everything look nice. I'm going to pull the positive back off. Actually, I got to check something. I'll be right back. Alright, so what I want to do right now is I had said I wanted to add a fuse to that positive lead, just for safe measure. So right now I have my meter hooked up, and I have the running lamps on, but the wire disconnected from the positive. So all I have to do is touch this bad boy right here, and we can see it's pulling 3.29 amps with the fog lamps on. So that's nothing. I'm gonna fuse that with a that's gonna get fused with probably a 5 amp fuse, if I have it. Nice. And now they should be off. So what I'm going to do is disconnect this guy. And we'll get working on that, which shouldn't be too bad. So I do have a box of 5 amps, which is nice. I also have the fuse holder. I soldered a nice heat shrink ring terminal onto the end of it. I mean crimped. And gonna use this bad boy and just snip the ends, solder them together, and use some heat shrink tubing. While it isn't my best soldering job, it's the best I could do with a lighter and silver solder for pipes, so that was fun. I'm just gonna do one of these. Right there. I'm just gonna do a nice little bit of heat shrink. This stuff's pretty nice because it has that adhesive liner in it, so you get all the sealer that comes out of it. So you get a nice, good sealed solder joint. Shrink joint, so no water can get in. So now I'm going to feed the relay back up into the fender well here. Well, actually, I guess I'm going to put the wire loom back on the plug first. So that'll be a second. So all I did was I finished soldering. Just putting this guy through there like that. Everything else tucked up back behind there, all nicey nice. So now I'm going to hook up the battery. All permanently and stuff. Now, unless you're really looking for it, that kind of just blends in back there, which I like. And it was one of the big points of doing this. Next step's going to be tackling the relay itself, which should be in here. Yeah, it's over there. So what I'm going to do for that, I believe, is just stick a zip tie through that hole over there. I'll be back in a sec. Alright, so I got the wire hooked up, the relay mounted with the zip tie like I said I was going to do. Everything's tucked away all nicely. This is the only wire, which is pretty clean. You would never notice this at all unless you were really looking for it. So I'm kind of happy with it. And I put the air filter box back in. So now it's time to go underneath and tie up the wires. Alright, so I just disconnected the passenger side one, and I'm going to take it and just kind of run it up around over this. And now I'm just gonna take it up around this guy up here. Up around this guy over here. And just tuck them back there. Since that's where the headlamp is anyway. So I think I'm going to put a zip tie here through this hole. bit more. Right there. More nut. I'll get one over here then. Do something like that.
Video?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that should be good. So now it's not like it's hanging on anything. Pull some of this slack out here. That should be good. Pull some of this slack out here. Should be good. And then pull some of this slack out here. Liking what I see so far. As far as this one goes on this side, I'm just gonna take some of the slack here, since it just comes right down, put a tie wrap right there, and leave that like that. So let me do that real quick. nice. So we'll just snip that, plug it back in. Let's see how much slack we got over here. I think I'm going to do the same. Just doing a little butterfly like that, and then tying it. Just like so. I'm gonna go grab the pliers and snip these real quick. Me too. I mean, that's it. Nice. Well, I'd say that that worked out really well. Overall, pretty impressed with the harness. Fit nicely. I only had to tie up a little bit of slack, as you saw. It's all tucked away nice and neat. You can't really even tell I did anything. It's nice, right? I don't know why that's poking out like that, but okay. Cool. Alright, so as far as wiring goes, after this, there's going to come up a part where I recorded that probably 2-3 months ago. It was right after I had installed them, explaining how I was originally planning to do it and wire it and everything, for those of you who just want to make it yourself. However, at this point in time, I still can't find a part number for the plugs that go into the bulbs. So you're on your own on that, but I will have the video of my diagram and drawing following. Otherwise, hope you enjoyed. Have a nice day. Finito. So this is part 2 of the 2018 Tahoe Fog Lamp install. And I'm sure you're wondering what you're looking at right now. Well, basically, on the 2018s, the fog lamp circuit is not there. Like the lead to the dash panel cut out for it is not run to the BCM from what I've gathered from researching online. And because of that, it makes just adding them in and making them plug and play relatively hard. So you have to get kind of creative in your wiring. Now, right away, I'm just going to tell you this right now. I'm not 100% sure how this will affect your factory warranty or anything like that. So proceed with caution if you do. That being said, what I'm going to do is probably better than a lot of things that I've seen roll off of dealerships, for those factory installed options. Or dealer installed options, I should say. So basically, what's going to happen here is there's going to be a few things that need to get done. Now, the way I'm wiring it will allow the fog lights to just come on whenever the parking lights are on. Now, generally, during the day, no matter what, if you hit the fog light button, the parking lights come on with the fog lights, because generally it's, foggy out, and the parking / running lights should come on. So, technically, that's normal operation. The problem is you'll also have the fog lights will come on with the low beams, but they'll stay on with the high beams. And now, as far as I know, state by state, no matter what, the fog lamps cannot stay on. Like, you cannot have more than 4 sources of light on the front of the vehicle at a time. So having the fog lamps on with the low beams and the high beams would be a problem. We'll get into that a little bit later, though. So the way I'm going to wire this up is, underneath the fuse block on the hood, the only fuses for the headlamps are for the HIDs, which are, I think, 121 and 122, or 120 and 121, something like that. This truck doesn't have HIDs, it just has the regular halogen projectors. So that's out of the question. Those fuses are just there for show, they don't do anything. So fuses 42 and 41 are for the parking / running lamps. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to use one of those fancy add-a-fuse circuits, which I'll show you in a minute. And I'm going to pull off of fuse 42 here and use that to trigger a relay, which will be wired to constant 12 volts and will then engage the fog lamps once the parking lamps are triggered. So I'll get into that in a second to sort of illustrate exactly what's going to be done. So basically, to get started, the first thing that we need to get power to our relay. Now, the way I'm going to be showing you this is the way I'm going to be wiring it with only one relay. However, you can do it with a dual relay setup, and I'll explain how that works at the end of the video. So basically, we need something to trigger our relay. We're using pin 42, fuse 42 in the fuse block under the hood to trigger it. And basically, how we're going to get our power is through one of those add-a-fuse systems. So that would be one of these guys here. Basically, all this does is it goes into your slot on the fuse block, and it has 2 fuse slots. This one right here retains your original fused lead. So you'll stick whatever size fuse was in there back into this spot right here. This one up here, you can add a fuse of your choosing, and then it runs out through this lead here, which is somewhat illustrated up over here. Basically, what I'm using for this, I'm going to use something like a 2 amp fuse, only because this isn't going to have anything other than the coil on our relay being powered by it. It's not going to be what's powering the lights, so to say. So basically what's going to happen is this is going to come out and it's going to run across like so. This will then be attached to our relay. So on our relay, I'm going to be using either a 4 or 5 pin. I haven't 100% decided yet, but I've drawn it up with a 5 pin because that's what I have sitting here right now. This is just a 5 pin weather pack relay, Bosch style, from online. If you look on the top here, it gives you the whole pinout of everything on it as well, and that's what I've replicated on the drawing here. So basically, what's going to happen is you have 5 wire leads on your relay, as I've drawn them. Your relay, pin 86 and 85, which are these two right here, your white and black, are what energizes your coil. So if you apply a positive 12 volt to this, which is what's going to be fed off of fuse 42 under the fuse block, and then you ground out this black wire, whenever there's positive on here, the relay is going to switch shut, and the switch will be giving power from your direct battery feed, this red wire, which is going to be coming from your hookup at the fuse block. So on the 2018s, I'm not sure on the 2015, 16, 17s, but the battery is on the opposite side, the passenger side of under the hood per se, the right side, if you're sitting from the driver's seat. And there's a heavy gauge positive wire that runs over to the fuse block up on the back, right up against the firewall. So all I'm going to be doing is I'm going to pull this hex nut off, and I'm going to add a hookup on that large terminal. That'll be done using one of these fused links. Now, the fog lamps are roughly 26 watts a piece. So let's just say 25 times 2, so that's 50 watts for the 2 lamps-ish, give or take. And you're going to be running at about 12 volts. So you're looking at 5-ish amps you're going to need. So basically you need to fuse this with a 5 amp fuse. I'm going to use a 7.5 for safe measure, but I'm also going to be running it with 12 gauge wire. So a bit overkill for what we're going to be doing, but overall, in the grand scheme of things, the fuse will definitely be the thing to blow and the wiring won't melt. So once this is hooked up at your positive, it's going to then be hooked up to your red lead on your relay, like so. Once you have that, this red wire will have constant 12 volts. Now, when the relay switches, it switches between this yellow terminal, which will not be used, and this blue one. So this is an 87A normally closed and an 87 normally open. In other words, when the coil doesn't have its positive trigger, this blue feed, which is the one that goes to the fog lamps, won't be hooked up. This yellow one will be, which is why I'm hesitant to use a 5-pin for this instead of a 4-pin. Now, what I'm probably going to do is I will just remove the yellow wire here and just seal this up, since this is a silicone-based weather pack with just a dab of silicone on the end of it, and call it a day. Or I'll just use one of the 4 pins I have laying around too. I just couldn't find it. This is, again, what I had that was easy to get to. So after that, what's going to happen is once you're triggered, this little guy here is going to switch to pin 87 inside the relay. That's why you hear relays click. That's the case. Once this has power, it clicks. Now we're going to have our positive 12 volt feed running to our heavy gauge wire, which will then run down to the fog lamps. I'm going to use a shared ground where pin 85 is going to be grounded out, and I'm going to use a 12-2 wire in a loom that's also grounded, and that's going to run down to the fog lamps rather than grounding the fog lamps out at the housings. Again, just because I want to make the install as clean as possible, and I'm going for you not being able to see anything that I've done. Other than that, that's basically how the system works. So parking lamps come on, this fuse gets energized, energizes the relay, fog lamps come on. So at night, when your headlights come on, the fog lamps will just come on. This will basically be auto-on fog lamps. Now, that's it. If you don't really understand this from the drawing, I'm sure you'll be able to sort of see it once it's actually laid out in the vehicle. I'm also going to go through how I make the harness, because I'm going to set up the harness outside of the car. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. So if you've tuned into this part of the video, you wanted to see what I was talking about with the headlamps and having the fogs on. So basically, you're not really supposed to have your fog lamps on with your high beams. The way this is wired up right now in this drawing, it would be. However, what we can do is we can sort of negate that by adding a second relay. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this here exactly the same. This will still be hooked up the same way. However, picture this. On this pink wire right here, the one that goes to fuse 42, what if we were to break it off and add a second relay in? And use another 5-pin where the pin is normally closed on 87A. So what we would do is, under the fuse, under the hood on the fuse block, there's a fuse for your high beams. That's, again, only activated when the high beams are on. So what we could do is we could use that as another trigger on a relay and wire this relay that's on this lead backwards. So 30 would have the 42 lead hooked up to it, and then it would go out to 87A, which would then just pass through right back to number 86, the white wire on the other relay. So that would mean that when you turn it on, the other relay is not doing anything. It's just passing straight through it without anything happening. But when you flick on your high beams, this solenoid, this gate on the other relay will now flip to pin 87, breaking contact with 87A. And what that'll do is that'll actually de-energize the coil on the fog lamp relay, causing the fog lamps to shut off when the high beams are on. Basically, this is a kind of like a latching relay system, but not really. It's a dual relay setup. So in other words, when one relay is on, the other one will be off, and vice versa. And you could use that to shut off, if you're concerned about it, your fog lamps when the high beams come on. Now, back in the day, a lot of people, especially on like the older Tahoes and Silverados and everything, used to do what was called the 6 high mod, where your headlights stay on with your high beams and your fog lamps. So when you flipped on your high beams, everything stayed on. And, basically doing it the way that I have it pinned out here would do exactly that. It would be a 6 high. Although the Tahoe has halogen projectors, so really it's just a gate in the projector that's flipping up and down for the high beams. But you get the idea. So this is an avenue to approach. If you want to do it the right way, you would have to add that second relay in on this lead, and yeah. Otherwise, this is the easier way to do it, and then you don't have to worry about 2 relays and trying to hide them, and it just sort of looks neater doing only the one. But I'm not like terribly concerned about having both of them on at the same time. It's not really like that big of a deal to me. But for a lot of you guys out there, I just wanted to include the correct way to do it. That's still the wrong way, because the right way to do it is just to buy the truck with the fog lamps to begin with. But, you can't always do that. Thanks for watching. Talk to you guys later.